So much of our success is determined by how we think. Today, I'm going to go through 4 mindsets that I wish I had learned earlier on. Now, these are ways of thinking that will make a big difference in how you learn and how you approach painting. In order to improve, we have to fail. There's no way around this. That is just one of the realities of learning something and really pushing yourself to be the best that you can be. If you want to improve, you need to fail. We need to paint a lot of paintings before we really start to see big differences. Here's a look at just some of the paintings that I've painted along the way. And you can clearly see that my early work is very different than more recent paintings. But the only way to get to this was to paint a lot of paintings that I wasn't happy with. When you're learning something new, you need a lot of repetitions. And that's very important in watercolor because timing is so important. Drawing and learning values and all of these important concepts take time. And the only way to improve in these is to make a lot of mistakes along the way. So if you are frustrated, if you feel like you're just not painting the way that you want to and you feel stuck, know that you are in the middle of a learning process and that these things take time, and every time you show up and put in the effort, that is success. And if you keep showing up, you will see improvement over time. We want to see results right away. We want to just understand something and learn something as quickly as possible. But that isn't really the reality of how it works. And the more comfortable that you can become in failing, the more likely you are to succeed. And that brings me to idea number 2, and that is value consistency in your efforts over results. Now that means that really hang your hat on how often you are practicing, how consistent you are in showing up for this thing that you want to improve in. You might implement something like a practice calendar, a way of keeping track all the times that you've shown up, all the times that you are making effort to improve in something. And so it's simple. You get a calendar, and every day that you make that decision to paint or draw or do something that gets you better as a painter, you mark it off on the calendar. Then in those moments that you're feeling frustrated, that you're not seeing the progress, you can look back and say, I made this decision so many of these days to show up, and that is what is important. If we can really focus on that consistency and value that in ourselves and give yourself some credit for showing up to improve, you will see a big improvement in your painting over time. That's a very big mindset shift that I wish I had taken earlier. Number 3, this comes up a lot when I am teaching students. There is no right way to paint. There is no only way to paint. And it's interesting because if I'm talking about a concept that really works for me, sometimes I get pushback from people saying that, no, I've seen an artist do this a different way. I've seen an artist paint from dark to light in watercolor rather than light to dark. And I think that that is great because we don't all have the same approach. There's not a one size fits all. There's not an exact right way to do things. What I want to do in this channel is show you the things that work for me. And they're going to work for some people and they're not going to work for other people. You might latch on to one particular artist and you might think that they have the right way of doing this. But what you're going to find out the longer that you paint is there are going to be little things that you pull from several different artists, multiple influences that work best for you. But you need that time and that space to absorb the teaching, absorb the influences, and then determine what works for you the best. It can be very tempting to find one philosophy in painting that you really stick to. And I think that can be valuable early on. You might hit a wall down the road and start introducing other influences, other ways of painting, other ways of teaching. And that's okay, because if you stick with this and you are consistent in your practice, you are going to find things that work for you specifically. And that's okay. So don't get too tied down in one way of doing things. You can always learn from multiple people, multiple influences, and I think that's a very healthy approach. And something that I wish I had understood earlier is that comparison is the thief of joy. And I think there's a lot of truth in that with social media. If you follow a lot of artists like I do, you are constantly surrounded with other people's artwork. And the reality is that everyone is on their own journey. And there's this epidemic of constant comparison of your work to other artists, and how does your work stack up to other artists. And social media is good in some ways and really bad for artists in other ways. If we are constantly comparing ourselves to other people, we are never going to be good enough. We're always going to see people that are ahead of us on the journey, and that's going to take the joy out of learning and painting and growing. So if you find yourself bumping up against that with social media, with constantly comparing yourself or feeling some type of resentment or judgment to other artists or to yourself, consider taking a break from social media, because life is too short to get bogged down with comparison and to be bitter. You know, as you progress, you're going to be putting your artwork out there more. There's a lot of vulnerability that goes along with that. And if you see a lot of other artists that are making the big exhibitions and you aren't, or they're accomplishing something that you wish you were accomplishing, that can really drag you down. Now, there's nothing wrong with being motivated, and even some competition can be healthy. I just really think that if we're stuck in this comparison, looking at other people's work constantly and pulling ourselves down, it's very destructive. Be mindful of this. Is comparison something that is taking the joy out of your painting? And if so, take a step back from social media. Be very conscious with how you take in other people's artwork. Maybe just go to museums. Maybe don't get on Instagram, and look for inspiration rather than comparison and competition. Other people's success means nothing about you. And the sooner that you can realize that, the happier that you are going to be as a creator and a painter. I wish I had understood these things earlier, and I'm happy to share them with you now, and I hope that they can make a difference for you. Have you ever been really excited about a painting and you get all set up, you find that right reference that you're excited about, and then it's time to go and you feel lost? You ever had that experience? You just are having a hard time finding consistency. Some of your paintings turn out, some of your paintings don't turn out, and you're not really sure why. Well, I have a free resource that I want to give to you today that can help with these problems. My 5 steps to plan a successful watercolor painting. I walk you through the crucial planning phase of your painting that will help you understand what you're going to paint first, second, and third. The planning is really so important, especially in watercolor. This medium is harder to correct. It's so immediate. So having that plan is very important. I send you a PDF that you can download. And the great thing about this is you can have it on your phone, you could print it out, and you can take a look at these crucial planning steps before you start each painting to ensure that you're thinking through these important things as you get started. You can download this right now before you start your next painting. All you have to do is follow this link here and download my 5-step guide to planning a successful watercolor painting.